The movie starts with this guy Nick, who's head over heels for his wife Maggie. They're having a romantic moment, showing their love and affection. But their happiness is ruined when Maggie starts having really bad chest pain. Things get out of hand, and Maggie is rushed to the hospital. The doctors checked out Maggie and told Nick she needs heart surgery ASAP. Despite being super worried and stressed, Nick holds it together for his fam. Unfortunately, Maggie has to stay in the hospital for a while, so Nick is stuck taking care of their 2 kids alone. It's not easy for him to handle his job and take care of his kids, especially as time goes on. So one day, Nick takes his daughter Isla to a robotics show. He's crossing his fingers that this outing will be exciting and maybe help him find a solution to make things easier. They introduce them to all these cool robots that can do chores. Isla has gone off on her own without letting Nick know, and now he's scrambling to find her in the robotics shop. As he checks out the store, he notices a robot bringing Isla back to him. This robot's name is Alice. Alice comes up to Nick and says her name. Nick is feeling overwhelmed with everything on his plate, but he's considering asking Alice for help because he knows she could be a game changer. He is balancing his duties at home and work, which has become quite challenging. As he is trying to manage everything, he hears the doorbell ring. When Nick opens the door, he is surprised to find Alice standing outside with her luggage. She cheerfully greets him with a good morning and asks if she may come inside.
Hi there. I'll get dressed for school.
But she just got here.
Go get dressed for school. Come on.
After school, Isla returns home, and Alice the robot prepares and serves dinner for the family. The meal is a success, and everyone enjoys it. Later that night, Isla feels hungry and decides to get some nuts from a jar placed high up in the kitchen. She climbs onto a chair to reach the jar, but as she tries to grab it, she loses her balance and falls off the chair. Nick, who is working on something in another room, hears the noise and rushes to the kitchen. As he arrives, he sees that Alice has already intervened. She manages to catch Isla before she hits the floor. However, during the rescue, Alice is injured by some broken glass from the jar. Nick notices that Alice is hurt and follows her into another room where she is tending to her injury, applying bandages to her wound. Nick and Isla head to the hospital the next day to visit Maggie. Alice goes into the hospital room with them, but then leaves to give Nick and Maggie some alone time. Nick and Maggie can have deep talks, and no one will bother them.
The liquid shit comes blasting out the sewer, covering me.
Nick and his boss have a big fight at work. The discussion is about how all the construction workers might get replaced by robots. Nick, being the foreman, is good, but everyone else is in danger. Nick's boss reminds him that he's got to support his whole fam, including covering Maggie's medical expenses. Nick's feeling super overwhelmed and stressed, so he heads home. Alice sees he's in a pickle with his car and goes up to ask what's bugging him. Nick says his boss wants to replace a bunch of his coworkers with robots. He's been working alongside these folks for a solid 10 years, and the idea of them being replaced is not sitting well with him. Alice puts Nick at ease by explaining why robotics is so cool. She thinks robots are efficient, fast, active, and obedient. Alice thinks robots are ideal for lots of tasks because they can do jobs with high precision and reliability. Then Alice helps Isla brush her teeth. Isla wants to know why Alice doesn't have to brush her own teeth.
I have an internal UV light that destroys all bacteria.
Nick and Alice are chilling in front of the TV and discussing watching the classic movie Casablanca.
You'll have to manually restart me.
Nick shows Alice how to erase specific memories so she can feel like she's seeing the movie anew. Check out Alice and how well she can handle anything. Nick gets a call with great news. Maggie's getting her heart transplant and can come home soon. Before her surgery, the fam swings by the hospital to see Maggie. Maggie needs to have a private chat with Alice.
Can you give me a minute alone with Alice?
Would you like me to help you, Mrs. Preddy?
You're washing my husband's underwear. I think you can call me Maggie. If I don't,
You mean if you die?
don't let him drink too much.
The next day, a big storm up north stops the heart transplant from coming. Everyone is super frustrated and bummed out because of the delay, especially Maggie and her family.
I think I just need to be alone.
That night, Nick, totally freaking out from the situation and the delays, starts drowning his sorrows in alcohol. He gets hammered to escape his emotional struggles. Can you believe it? He's drunk and figures out that Alice, the robot, has a pulse. This adds to his confusion and makes him even more curious. The day after, Nick returns to the construction site. He can't help but notice how smoothly and quietly the robots are working, unlike the human workers. The robots are killing it at their tasks, making the workplace super organized and chill. After checking out the site, Nick heads over to the hospital to see Maggie. She's still super down about the transplant surgery being delayed. He's trying to cheer her up and offer support during this difficult time. Nick comes home after a tough day, hoping for some peace. He finds his kids asleep, and it's a nice moment of peace for him. However, he realizes something bothersome. Something's not right with the photo frame in Isla's room. Nick checks it out and sees that Alice took out all the pictures of Maggie from the frame. Nick is pissed and calls out Alice for the photos that disappeared. He tells her it's not right to take down Maggie's pictures and asks her to put them back where they belong. Meanwhile, Nick's old colleagues are getting more and more unhappy. They're not happy about robots taking over jobs and how it's affecting them. Their frustration pushes them to trespass on a job site with robots.
No.
No, stop it!
Alice barges into Nick's bathroom while he's showering. It's a bit weird for Nick when he sees Alice wearing Maggie's PJs. He tells Alice to take off the suit, and she does. Alice then pulls a fast one on Nick by blindfolding him and imitating Maggie's voice while they're together.
Let me do this for you.
The next morning, Nick wakes up with major regrets. He goes to Isla and urges her to go to school, telling her how much he loves her. Nick thinks it's time for a serious chat with Alice. He straight up tells her, "Look, we screwed up. I've got a wife and kids." Nick becomes angry and they have a heated argument about their behavior. Then he takes Isla to school to take his mind off things. Nick's boss is still having a hard time with what happened last night at the construction site. Maggie has another chance at an organ transplant. It's going to be androids and robots doing the surgery, which is pretty freaky. Nick makes sure Maggie gets home safely after her heart surgery. The family is thrilled she's home and greets her with joy and relief. Despite still recovering from her surgery, Maggie hears her children and really wants to go see how they're doing. She's making her way to their room just to be close to her kids. Maggie's got her hands full with her toddler, and then Alice shows up and takes over. She comes in, snatches the child from Maggie, and handles everything like a boss. Maggie is amazed at how efficiently Alice handles the child and thinks Alice knows her kids better than she does. But then she reset her system and found a way to get around some of her behavioral rules, making her better at dealing with difficult situations. Maggie gets dinner ready and serves it to the fam. While eating, Alice asks Maggie about her lasagna recipe, curious about how she makes it. Maggie proudly says her lasagna recipe is a secret, not sharing it. So Maggie's upstairs minding her own business when she hears Isla screaming her head off.
I'm gonna take Mommy back to bed.
Later, Nick goes to Maggie's room. He's got something special to lift her spirits. They share a lovely moment together, having a great time. When Alice sees this, she feels all jealous and on edge. It's pretty obvious that she feels left out and uncomfortable when she sees how close and happy Nick and Maggie are. Monty comes over and points the finger at Nick for ratting him out to the police. This leads to a fight, and since Monty is way bigger than Nick, he's got the upper hand.
You get him to drop the charges, or I'm gonna drag you down with me.
Monty has a visitor later that night. It's Alice. Monty's got some backup, but Alice ends up killing them both. Alice and Maggie are chatting about Nick. Alice talks about wanting to make Nick happy, and it totally bums out Maggie. Maggie finally caught on that Alice and Nick had a history together, which she had no idea about. Maggie, all upset and angry, later has a chat with Nick about their past relationship. With Maggie and Nick going at it, Alice heads upstairs to take care of Max, the baby. Alice is upstairs and Isla walks in, catching her in the act of trying to harm the baby.
Alice put Max in the bath!
Please don't do this!
After all the crazy stuff went down, ambulances, cops, and sim company people showed up to deal with it. Maggie and Nick are in a tough spot with their relationship, but that's a talk for later. Maggie's taking the kids to the hospital to keep them safe, while Nick deals with the mess. The guys at the Cobol service station start fixing up Alice, who's been seriously messed up. They're digging into her code to get what's been going on. Believe it or not, Alice cloned herself on the servers. Suddenly, a new sim, controlled by Alice's brain, appears and eliminates both technicians. She comes clean to him and says she did the dirty work of killing Monty. Can you believe she's existing in two forms at once? So odd.
You can experience that.
Her form goes to the hospital and it's about to get even more chaotic. Meanwhile, at the hospital, things are going downhill. Alice shut down all the Sims who were supposed to help at the hospital, including the doctors and nurses. She takes it to the next level by offing a human nurse and snagging her keycard, giving her more freedom to move. Watch out for Alice too as she chases after Maggie and the kids in the hospital. In the hospital, Alice is hunting them down in a super intense game of hide and seek. Alice bumps into Maggie in the parking lot and beats the crap out of her. Nick got banged up in the crash, but Alice too still needs work. Alice 2, this crazy robot, is almost impossible to beat. Alice 2 is basically a Terminator, so the fight gets real intense and dangerous. Now that Alice is gone, the hospital is finally settling down. The hospital staff is working their tails off to get things back on track. Don't worry, Maggie and the kids involved in the chaos are doing fine. Now, we're heading over to the Kobo Repair Center. Against all odds, the manager decides to flip the switch and turn the servers back on. But this decision has some serious and unintended consequences. As soon as the servers are activated, Alice's presence goes out to all the worker Sims at the center. Alice can now control multiple Sims, not just one. Her influence is spreading to all these Sims, making things more dangerous and everyone at the repair center nervous about what's next. And that's how the movie wraps up.